Hey, everybody, thank you all so much. On this episode of Curiosity Theory, we're going to be talking about the AI revolution, some awkward oligarchs, and techno-feudalism. What kind of jobs will exist in the future? The commercialization of space and whether or not that's a vibe. And then maybe even Dr. Doolittle implications, being able to talk to and translate the language of animals.
Curiosity Theory. Thanks for joining.
We are in the midst of the AI revolution. There's a lot of hype around the AI. There's a lot of exponential growth that's happened really quickly. And a lot of times I don't think we consider the ramifications of the exponential growth that's occurred. There are these oligarchs that are, making billions of dollars, and there's other things happening too. And I think someone who's done a really great job at highlighting this space is this woman by the name of Karen Howe. She's got an MIT engineering background and then went into journalism and wrote this book, Empire of AI, where she outlines this AI age and, kind of this juxtaposition of two ideals, like scaling AI at all costs versus OpenAI's idealistic mission of kind of helping the world, giving everyone access to knowledge.
Is that OpenAI's mission statement? What's the
So my understanding, right, and we can actually fact check this in real time, but OpenAI started off, it was co-founded by Elon Musk. Sam Altman was also a part of it, and I believe Ilya as well. I forget Ilya's last name. Ilya Sutskever, right? They were all in this background, and they wanted to create open-sourced artificial intelligence. Like the mission behind it was to make sure that no one AI gets too powerful and disrupts any other AI. And so we want to have this open source AI that's available for the public to use and iterate upon and improve upon. And it actually started off as a nonprofit. Most people may not know that today OpenAI is a for-profit company owned by, there's a significant percentage of it that's owned by Microsoft, and they have a partnership as well. But it's kind of created some conflicts of interest. But do you have the mission here?
I do. I pulled up the mission. OpenAI. This is on their website. Our mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, which is, I guess it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but this is the thing that isn't just specifically good at one task, but has this like general human super intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, AI systems that are generally smarter than humans, I guess I didn't need to define that. They did it just fine. Benefits all of humanity. So sounds good. I mean, sounds like I guess what you would say if you were a tech company that owned AI system like this and wanted to talk to the public. So
yeah. I mean, and I think it's a key distinction from where we are today, and it's a line that's kind of continued to evolve over time, right? When we used to think of AGI, this generalized intelligence, maybe definitions from a decade or so ago would have like ChatGPT and Claude and some of these other AI tools might have fit some of those historical definitions of a generalized intelligence that you can throw math problems at it, you can throw essays at it, right?
Like the goalpost is always moving, right?
The goalpost has consistently been moving, but
they passed the Turing test a while
back.
And for the longest time, people debated whether or not that was even possible. And now they're like, oh, well, we passed it, but that's like actually not far enough.
It's a moving goalpost.
Right.
And so, but a lot of people don't know what it takes to actually iterate on and improve and scale AI, right? There's a lot of human input involved in that. You have, and Karen Howe actually does a great job at highlighting this. A lot of times these AI companies are hiring overseas talent to assess large volumes of data and scrape through the data and make sure that it kind of makes logical sense or that it's accurate, right? This data cleaning and data mining is creating a lot of job opportunities for people, but it's also disrupting a lot of the job market as well and putting people in really precarious situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's, we'll get more into that as well. We have Microsoft recently came out with a list where they have like the top 40 and the bottom 40 jobs that are essentially at risk for automation, for AI, replacing them. But I think I just to sort of close the loop on that mission statement and what AI's original mission was, being nonprofit, and then wanting this to be for the good of all, and then transitioning to a for-profit company when they realized how much profit there is to be made, I think is sort of telling, and maybe even has an element of this, like the cliche corruptible spirit that a hero may have when they get a lot of things, or somebody who comes into power and it's supposed to be all for like a good thing, and then before long it's like, oh no, this is actually going to be for profit. We're going to be the wealthiest company that has ever existed on earth.
So it's interesting because when I think Sam Altman was asked about this and some of these other AI companies that have built scale solutions, right? Initially, we didn't think that the barrier to success for a large language model was scaled compute, meaning just the amount of computers that were powering this thing, right? And then some new thesis basically proved by OpenAI that, like, look, if you just throw more and more computing resources at this thing continues to get smarter, and there's new emergent capabilities that occur. And essentially, what they postulated was that in order for them to achieve a certain degree of intelligence in their models, right, from GPT-2 to get to GPT-3 to get to GPT-4, right, you'd have to build larger and larger compute clusters, which means throwing more and more money at the problem. And as a nonprofit, you actually don't have the business model to support that infrastructure. So I guess from that perspective, it made logical sense. But, then the question becomes, well, do we need to become this big and this powerful, right? And then what is being sacrificed in the process of doing this quickly and competitively against other countries?
Yeah, that's so you brought up something that I think is important to touch on, which is sort of the need for just brute force compute, just brute force computing power. And what that means is that you need to build these massive data centers that are getting larger and larger and larger. And for reference here, AI is not the only thing that uses data centers. Any company that has a cloud component that is relying on computers has data centers, right? So this is something that every company has.
Right, and even really important systems. I was actually just working with Microsoft on this project with AI for science.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about this, right? Like healthcare, insurance, financial records, like all of these really important things are housed in this cloud. And sometimes we get stuck in this metaphor of what the cloud actually, and don't know what the cloud actually is, because we're thinking of this like, oh, it's just in the air. Well, no, it's like there are physical large data centers that are backed up and redundant, and they're housing all of this data somewhere in some location.
Exactly. And I think it's like important to realize that this is not some new thing for AI, right? Where like AI is creating these data centers. The data centers are here. They take water, they pollute. That's always sort of been an issue. But with what you just said about just they're talking about data centers that are like the size of a city, the size of Manhattan, right? Like you're talking about scaling this thing beyond what exists now.
Project Stargate, $500 billion investment into AI infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah. And so now when you start scaling at that level, then you like have real issues with, I think the big one that I'm hearing about now is energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily a clean water issue. Yes, data centers use water. You need to cool down computers, but there's a lot of, we waste a lot of water doing a lot of things, right?
Right.
Obviously you don't want to divert that from like people that need to drink it. But like I said, if you look at the water usage that we have as a country, we waste a lot of water doing a lot of things. But what will be an issue is energy. And I know that this is perhaps a positive offshoot here, an unforeseen positive benefit is that we need to find more efficient energy sources like fusion, nuclear energy, which sort of has gotten a bad rap, I think, for a number of reasons. People are scared of the word generally nuclear. It sounds dangerous. Everybody is familiar with Chernobyl. There have been a couple meltdowns, a couple incidents. Usually they happen from incompetence, like mistakes that were made. But nuclear energy is the cleanest energy source. I mean, solar energy is really just a byproduct of the nuclear fusion going on in the sun,
right?
Yeah. Right. And I don't know if anybody knows this. I mean, there's energy everywhere. Like there's an infinite amount of energy, essentially, if we can figure out how to capture it. But in 1 second, the sun puts out enough energy that can power modern civilization, like our modern needs, for something like 500,000 years in 1 second. Now that you would have to, capture all of the energy
Right.
from the sun and, that radiates in all different directions. But that's just 1 second to power what we have going on now for 500,000 years. So it's like, there's a ton of energy that we just aren't taking advantage of. And nuclear energy sort of like brings that power and puts it in your pocket. If you, get your R&D to the point that that's something that we can use. Right. And I see that as like a viable energy source moving forward for AI, but for everything. It's clean, right? Now there's, along with the fear of nuclear is this probably these campaigns that I suspect are stoke that fear, and maybe probably a lot of lobbying and suppression in the government from big oil, right? Who doesn't want us to get off of oil, which we absolutely can do. The sun gives, all the energy that we could ever need if we could capture it and hold on to it, which is also an issue. So there are some technological issues. There's like some engineering feats that need to be done, but there's an infinite amount of energy effectively for us to use if we can just figure out how to convert it and harness it.
Right. And as AI continues to scale, there's going to be increasing energy demands, and there's going to be more stuff that just requires more of it. And I think it's also interesting to contextualize what you said about nuclear energy, right? Because there's nuclear fission, which, creates nuclear bombs. And then there's nuclear fusion, which is the process that's happening in stars. Mm-hmm. And also there's been some recent breakthroughs. I don't know if you read about any of that stuff. There's like recent breakthroughs around nuclear fusion that have occurred.
I remember there was something a couple years ago where they had achieved fusion for a very, very brief amount of time, I think.
Yeah, so there's a German company this year that apparently has taken a significant step forward in the energy output and this kind of system that they've built in order to get us closer to commercializing this technology, which is, I think, really interesting.
It is. It's super interesting. And yeah, you brought up bombs, which the first nuclear bombs were fission, which is about splitting atoms apart. But I think there are also fusion bombs. I know there are hydrogen bombs.
Yeah, there are. Hydrogen bombs are known as nuclear fusion bombs. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fascinating. I think another notion that's kind of related to this whole tech ecosystem that is always evolving is actually highlighted very well in this book I was reading called Techno-Feudalism. And it kind of outlines, well, one, what actually feudalism was, which is this, earlier version of society. I think a lot of times people refer to feudalism in the context of Japan, like feudal Japan, where you had these lords that owned these large amounts of land. And, there were no other people besides this small group of elite wealthy people. Everyone else was a renter, right? They all rented the land. Even if you owned a house or you lived in a house on the land, you were a renter of that land. And so techno-feudalism is kind of what they're describing as the system that we live in today. It's a modern day version of feudalism where you have a small amount of people that own these technological properties, these data centers, these social media companies, right? Your social media account, you have hundreds of thousands of followers. I think I have almost 100,000 followers on my platforms. We don't own those accounts. We own a username that gives us access to this stuff. And then we post this content and it can be used, I think for some of these websites can be used as training data, right? For their AI models, right? We don't have full ownership rights over this. We're renting this digital real estate from these techno-feudal lords. I think it's a fascinating concept, and it's basically outlining kind of where we are today.
Yeah, that's when you put it like that, it kind of hits hard. But yeah, I don't own any of my accounts. We don't own a lot of stuff. I have email account. Almost everything that I do is done online. So I'm sort of like using the services or the products that are owned by somebody else or some other entity.
Right. And I think there's a way to combat that. Actually, a mentor of mine suggested this to me a while back. Like, hey, man, like, are you actively creating an email list? Right. Because that is one audience that you can have access to this list, send them things regularly, and then you kind of can own that audience fully, But even then, you're using Gmail and these other email clients to actually reach them.
Yeah.
But I think that that's just one better way to take a little bit more ownership over your audience. But for the most part, we're just renting digital real estate. Those of us that are building careers on the internet, which seems like there's only going to be more and more people doing that from these quote unquote techno-feudal lords.
Yeah, it's interesting how you see that that growth kind of transition from physical real estate to this digital real estate, this internet. You know, people say that the internet's not a real place, but it's like it is.
Yeah, and I think of this in the context of the crypto boom, right? The previous crypto cycle.
Do you have crypto? Do you hold crypto?
Yeah. I'm a holder of crypto. I was an early investor in Bitcoin, actually.
Oh, for real? You held on to it the whole time?
Well, it's a funny story, man. So I invested in Bitcoin in 2016. My first job. It was like I was working in tech, and it was at the orientation, and they had all these executives there that we asked questions to, and I said, hey, what do you all think about the context of cryptocurrency and its potential to disrupt financial markets, right? In 2016, they were like, this kid's an amateur. This is a silly question. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, you know what? There's a non-zero chance that I'm right. And so a percentage of my paycheck, my first paycheck, I went to a Bitcoin ATM, which you had to do at that time. And I got a Bitcoin, a receipt that had the keys to my crypto, to my Bitcoin. It was like 0.15 Bitcoin. Which I probably got for like $100 and something. Today it would be worth about $20,000 based on the crypto market. And then I backed up that receipt on my phone. I'm a tinkerer with phones. I mess around with my Android. I formatted my phone, deleted all the data. I was like, that's okay. I got my receipt in my wallet. I washed my wallet in the washing machine. So there's like there's like 0.15 Bitcoin.
Couldn't have happened to a better person. Congratulations.
There's like 0.15 Bitcoin that is in my possession, floating out in the ether somewhere. So I don't own that now. But, you know, I think it's interesting because that's something I actually don't lose sleep over, right? Because I think I'm the type of person that I get on these cutting edge things, and I always am kind of aware of them before they happen.
Yeah. What would you say to the allegations that you're just a crypto bro?
So I think that's an interesting take, right? Well,
some people are saying.
Right. So I actually created an NFT collection a long time ago during the hype, right? Yeah. And I very much like believed in this idea of non-fungible tokens, like authenticity of things on the internet, right? And there's a specific use case I thought of, right? In the AI revolution, when there's so many dupes and fakes and things that aren't real, it's really easy to create a copy of something. And so you want a technology that can digitally certify that Dakotah Tyler said those things actually, right? And I can imagine a derivative of NFT technology actually working that way. So, but the reason I don't think I'm a crypto bro or evangelist even is because I think of it as an intelligent approach to financial literacy where, look, if you don't necessarily if you're not 100% sure that the US is going to exist, right? And most people's investment theses as they're like retiring, right? Let's say you're saving for retirement. You're going to, maybe build a Roth IRA and a 401k. You're investing in US companies. You might own U.S. real estate, and you might work at a U.S. job, right? And so everything that you do financially depends on the U.S. as a concept existing and having the power it does. Yep. Crypto, to me, is a hedge against that. So Bitcoin is just a way to... Bitcoin and other like blue chip cryptos like Ethereum, I think is just a way to maybe divert some of that investment capital. And, if worst case scenario, something bad happens, or even if the U.S. just loses its power as like a reserve currency in the world, I have this wallet with these crypto coins that have value in other places in the world.
Yeah, that's I think that aligns with my vision of you and like what I know about you. That you're kind of like always you're forward thinking, like on the forefront, not afraid to like dip your toes into a new thing, think about what's next, and to your point there. There has not, to my knowledge, I'm no historian, I know a little bit, there's not ever been an empire that has lasted indefinitely. There has never been and that is what the U.S. is now, especially in like the modern economy. And you can think of that empire's reach being more than just physical, although we do have bases all over the world, but financial.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like what you said, that the dollar is a reserve currency. Like this is sort of the thing that most other currencies are anchored to or compared to.
Right. Anchored to, compared to, and it holds strength in other parts of the world. People make investments in U.S. companies that don't live here because they believe in the strength of this thing.
Right.
Right. Which is all fictitious. A fascinating video I was watching probably a couple months ago now, and it comments by the name of Ray Dalio. He talks about the rise.
I don't know who that is.
Ray Dalio's, he's an investor, economist.
He's like a finance guy or something?
Finance
he's
guy.
An economist?
Yeah. Okay. We said what?
He's an economist?
Yeah, he's an economist.
Okay.
So yeah, years of experience in this space. But he's just like, I think he's more of a philosopher in some ways too.
Sure.
And he wrote this book about the rise and fall of these empires. Like he did a lot of research on the history of how these empires will rise and fall. And what he determined is that there's like quite a few factors that are precursors to the fall of these empires. And a lot of these things that he had already highlighted have occurred in the United States, right? And he says that, the U.S. is already on a downward trend, and that it's just a matter of time before the U.S. is usurped by a new global superpower, a new world entity.
And I guess when you strike that, and it makes sense. And I remember, it's like roughly I've heard that the number is somewhere between like 200 to 300 years, or
on average.
It's like somewhere around there, right? And how old is the U.S.? Like, what are we, like almost exactly 250 or two? I don't know. I'm not going to do the math, but
it's around, the average lifespan of a civilization, just a quick search here, is around 250 years.
Okay. So you're like around that area. And I think people a lot of times talk about the downfall of the U.S. and interestingly, everybody has different reasons for why that is. You got some people who are like blaming immigrants coming here. Some people who are blaming, and which has always been the case, right? You always try to scapegoat people, especially the people in power, who are the ones who I think are really eating right now. And I think that if thinking about that anxiety of the potential of the U.S. no longer being, at the top, whatever that means, colloquially, is what's happening in AI right now. And like, for example, why a 10-year moratorium on AI restrictions or rules or guidelines would even be considered? Because do the people in power, I mean, hell, do the citizens of the United States, do you really want to live in like a post-US at the top world? And I mean, there's so much education now, and there's been so much illumination on all of the horrible things and like the oppressive tactics that we've contributed to around the world to this day, right? Throughout history, but to this day. And I always, find myself thinking about how much privilege I have even had in my life. Like, no matter what things that I think that I've struggled with or ways that I was underprivileged, I live in a country where I can go from essentially not having an education to, in 10 years, having the right resources just through the public education system to get a PhD in astrophysics. And I wonder how many other places in the world can you go from basically knowing how to do simple multiplication and division to community college, undergrad, grad school, and get a PhD in astrophysics.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining Curiosity Theory. If you want to support us, check out our Patreon.
You will find behind the scenes footage, never before seen bonus content, and never to be seen again, but enticing and provocative nonetheless. Do a Q&A with Justin and myself, and maybe even weigh in on future episode topics for Curiosity Theory.
One of the tiers I think they should check out is the Galaxy Brain tier, which basically means you're a super smart person if you decide to support us.
It's the only tier. Justin came up with it. He's very proud of the name. Check us out. Curiosity Theory.
Right.
And so like you think about what are people willing to do to make sure that we win the AI race, to make sure that the US stands at the top. And it seems like anything. It seems like they're willing to let anything happen. And I think that that's a little bit terrifying in the anxiety, but from the perspective of like a falling country, that anxiety I think is real for a lot of people, especially people in power.
Right. And Karen Howe in that book, actually highlights this a lot. Like, what are the exploitative things that are occurring to people overseas as a result of this, right? She tells a story of this woman overseas who had this medical condition but can't leave her computer because she's constantly waiting for these AI jobs of data cleaning to show up on her computer screen. And so she lives this high stress, high anxiety life. And I think, yeah, in the context of education in our system in the United States and in other places, we definitely have a degree of privilege, but even that obviously comes with its fair share of
It does.
inefficiencies,
Mhm.
right?
It totally does. So, I don't say that to, to like, I'm not like necessarily touting like that, the US is the greatest place ever. But
Right.
I do recognize that, even to be able to have a hard path ahead of me and to have all these challenges to overcome, like there are a lot of places where you can go from zero to astrophysicist in 10 years in the world.
Yeah.
And a part of me is like very appreciative for even that opportunity. And the good and the bad of living here is that this is a place where you can do that.
Right. And I think as Americans, we have privileges in other countries as well. So
As
being in
well.
Thailand
Yeah.
for 40 days, man, I got to experience what it's like to have a US passport and the things that countries will do to allow me to stick around. Like,
Yeah.
one, it's way cheaper to live in Thailand because of the difference in price, the pricing power of the US dollar versus the Thai baht. And so, like, you could get a luxury apartment there for $600 a month, which if you're in the US right now, you might be like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then one another fascinating thing about the educational system in a lot of Asian countries is that it is actually very accessible. So when I was walking through Thailand in the mall, there was this whole floor of the mall dedicated to, and there are like 70 malls in Bangkok. It's outrageous. But there's a whole floor in the mall dedicated specifically to learning centers. And so there would be like upskilling people in technology, kind of like this equivalent to, and there were adults there were people of all
Yeah.
ages. And so it's almost it's almost like this equivalent to a community college housed inside of the mall that is super accessible for, a few baht, which is like, maybe for the cost of like $5 to $10. You can go in this thing and stay there all day, learn as much as you want. There's lectures happening, there's class happening, there's computers there. I was just fascinated by how much they're kind of like almost shoving that down your throat.
Yeah.
And at least in my experience in Asia compared to the US.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So you talked about a little while ago, the book by Karen Howe. Remind me of the name of the book.
The Empire, what is it? Hold on. Empires.
Well, while you look it up, you were talking about a woman that Karen had talked to.
Yeah, Empire of AI.
Empire of AI. So, and yeah, like just to reiterate, she kind of like lifts up the rock of like what's going on because we don't know, right? Like the government never put together a committee that's sort of vetting and auditing all these companies. And so we really don't know what's going on beyond what's reported. And but you said that she is sick. So she needs to like go to the doctor. She needs to get treatment or something like that. But she's waiting by her computer,
like anxiously awaiting
to try and get one of these AI data cleaning
because they're hyper competitive. Like it's like,
and they're gone in like a second. So
right.
if you step away, right,
you lose the opportunity to make money for the day.
Yeah,
potentially, right. Especially if you're a remote worker. And there's a lot of people in other countries that are kind of they're suffering as a result of this like rapid scaling that's occurring in these AI tools. She also looked into Sam Altman, right, and got a lot of interesting testimonies from people that are all around him and kind of a character portrayal of who he is, which I think was fascinating, especially because she's particularly rigorous, I think, in her approach to journalism. Like she's not, I think sometimes, and this is like from her words, and I might be not parroting this exactly precise, but from her perspective, she's got an MIT background. A lot of the colleagues that she has are working as higher up executives in these AI companies. And so she doesn't revere them as these ultra intelligent people that can do no wrong. She kind of takes like a more maybe jovial and colloquial stance to these colleagues of hers. And so she's kind of able to ask them more pointed questions, which I think it's really important for folks in science and technology to get into these communication fields. Because we can hold people accountable to a certain level, given the comprehension that we have of the ethical ramifications of the things that they're doing, right? Karen is able to dig into some of these, like, okay, you're building this big data center and this is a super ambitious project and that's great. But, what are the energy costs of that? Who's being displaced by that? She's able to ask these critical and really STEM-oriented questions that can, shed light on maybe some of the inequities that are occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you said that because this is why I think that this specifically is so important because who is asking those questions? You talked about the profile that she sort of exposed or presented on Sam Altman, and but you didn't really say like what that was. Like you didn't get into you could go into that a little bit, like this kind of ruthless at all costs nature, right? Which is exactly what you want to, as a journalist, be shining light on if there's this secret, this like
Yeah.
secret thing that's going on and we don't know. And the only thing we know is what these guys say when they get in front of a mic.
Yeah, so I'll read her direct response to some of these questions. So she describes Sam Altman here. He's a once in a generation fundraising talent. Like that is what he's particularly good at, right? Getting people to put immense amounts of money behind a cause. One thing I actually do know about Sam Altman also is that he was a former president of Y Combinator, which for those of the folks that don't know, yeah, he had a leadership role there, and Y Combinator is this like incubator for large tech startups in Silicon Valley. So, or small tech startups that are growing, but they usually are then set to become big startups. Like a lot of big companies have come out of Y Combinator. So that's his particular skill. She also says he's a once in a generation storytelling talent, which is why he's so good at fundraising, right? Storyteller. Yeah. He's able to paint an extremely persuasive vision of the future.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about the times that I've seen him talk. Kind of gets in front of a camera. He plays the meek and humble role as good as anybody that I've ever seen. And I think illustrates characteristics that you're like, oh, this is like a bright, thoughtful guy. Not that he isn't those things, but you know, well, keep going because I think that he wears the mask that he intends for the audience to see.
Yeah, so she continues and says, one of the things I sort of concluded through the reporting of my book is that when he says something to someone, what he's saying is more tightly correlated with what he thinks they need to hear than what he actually believes or the ground truth of the thing. He's able to say the things that really provoke people to kind of rally towards a general broad sweeping mission that he paints. And so even in some of the interview footage that I watched, they said that he's really good in one-on-one settings, right? When he has you to himself, he can listen to you and hear what you're thinking about the world and what you think is important. And he can tailor that messaging, right? He's got this vision in his head of what he wants.
It sounds like he has ChatGPT 5 running inside. He sounds like ChatGPT 5, right?
Yeah, maybe he's already got the implant, man. He's 10 steps. Maybe he is an agent of GPT 5, right?
Doing its bidding. Crazy.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting because you know, that's funny. I actually saw a recent interview of Sam Altman where he talked about GPT 5. We were having a conversation about this, and he was like, "Man, GPT 5 is so smart. Like it's something that a problem I was struggling to solve and ruminating on for a while, and GPT 5 just solved it. And I don't know how to think about that. Like I just feel worried and you know, we were talking about like, man, this is a great fundraising pitch.
Yeah, great marketing. You didn't know the answer to a question and ChatGPT gave it to you, and you're like, wow, this is the perfect answer.
And it's got you feeling concerned, which, you know, it highlights his humanity, and it
right.
gives that.
He's like just one of us. He's also worried about this stuff. He's like, wow.
I think we need to live stream Sam Altman. We need to do like a Kai Cenat version. Like put him on a Twitch stream. Let's see how he acts all the time.
No. Don't put him on Kai Cenat's show. He's going to come away with more fans than
well, he was on. I mean, Theo Von is like a really, you know.
Well, of course, right? These are very intentional appearances.
Right.
Where you can like put out this, and he does, and he can have a normal conversation with it seems like anybody. Seems like to me, you can have just a regular conversation, and yeah, man, it's I think that's really interesting, and that reminds me of a difference that I think is really pops out to me between science and tech, and you know, science and tech is oftentimes connected with an ampersand. That's science and tech to the point that you may start to think that these two things are one and the same, and there's definitely a relationship there, right? R&D and tech, there is a scientific process to go with that, but oftentimes these tech personalities are even much more cult-like and even like religious and fanatic than science in my opinion. And you get these characters like Sam Altman, who I think he's a charismatic guy. He's not like he's like a calm and charming personality. you know, and
Right.
he gives out he gives off that like meek and humble attitude. So if you were just to, you know, grade the vibes that you got from him, it's like, oh, like, no, he's a pretty cool guy. And it's like this is all you know, a part of building this persona to lead a company like OpenAI that, you know, may change the face of society, global society as we know it. And somebody else that had this thing, this sort of like religious presence is
Hmm.
Steve Jobs.
So yeah, I mean, oh, and really quick before we jump to Steve Jobs,
Mhm.
man, I think it's so interesting that conversely to this meek personality, right? Like, and maybe you could argue Zuckerberg also has that, right? But these people are investing lots of money in bunkers, right? Doomsday prep. Like they're really getting
Remember that
elaborate
came
in
out a
their
couple years
investment.
ago.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
so I actually just saw a recent thing here that says Sam Altman actually denied having an underground bunker and says that he has structures. Let me
He
see
has
the full.
subterranean structures. I wouldn't call it an underground bunker. It's more of like a subterranean structure.
Yeah, he denied having a bunker, saying instead that he has structures. He didn't share the details of the structures at the event, but did note that none of them would be helpful if artificial intelligence goes wrong.
Oh, well, that makes me feel so good. Actually, he comforted that's exactly what I was worried about.
I've never described any property I own as structures.
It's not really a mansion. It's like an above ground structure. It's
It's
a
a
couple
structure.
stories,
That
but
could
what is a
literally, that's
structure?
so open ended. That could be
Structure,
like
what is that?
that could be like a suit, like
Mm,
a mobile suit that you hop in.
yeah.
Like,
And I remember when this came out that there was like some stories that made the rounds, and you know when that happens, you don't really know like how much of it is hearsay and how much of it is
mhm.
nonsense. But some of these tech billionaires, yeah, like building bunkers, and you may wonder like why is that something that you have like a private island where you have um, a bunker?
Well, Zuckerberg refers to his 5,000 square feet bunker in Hawaii as like just a little shelter. Like they're all kind of downplaying the significance of these things. Yeah, man, I just got like a little 5,000
Like a
square
little
foot
wine
shelter.
cellar, no.
Yeah, just a little shelter.
No, I mean it's I think in there, you know, not to get too conspiratorial, but nobody knows, I think, what the future of AI holds. And every time I hear somebody computer make a little sound like that, it like just like erases my memory. It's like Men in Black. What was I saying?
You were saying that like we're all kind of unclear on what the future of AI
Oh
actually
yeah,
looks
yeah,
like.
right. Like every time you get
Maybe that was
experts,
programmed into you, man.
experts, yeah. Like hold up, experts will tell you all different things. You ask a bunch of different CEOs, they say all different things. Tons and tons of CEOs are saying that, you know, they're going to scale back on their workforce because they can. There are a lot of people who are experts in the field that don't seem to be worried about it. And so, to me, it's like clear that nobody knows.
All
Like
right.
nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen. And if you don't know, what is the worst case scenario? Like what do I don't know, just between you and I, what do you think is the worst case scenario for humanity as a whole for AI? Like the way that this plays out, the absolute worst case,
Uh,
even if it's of just a tiny fraction of a percent of a chance of it happening.
AI decides, well, one, AI gets in a supreme leadership role, right? And then makes executive decisions about who and who shouldn't stick around, but all of them being all of us being our subjects to its rule.
Yeah. So you think that
I think that that's very feasible
you think that's very feasible that it like
that we could continue
so like
outsourcing.
Terminator style.
I don't know if it gets to, look, that maybe that's a hypothetical scenario, right? But like, I think that right now we are outsourcing a lot of our decision making to AI, right? We talked before about cognitive offloading.
But what if it makes better decisions than we do? Like, I think, this is my opinion. I think that if we were to generally prompt AI, Chat GPT 4, whatever the most recent model is that's available to the public, on a lot of the decisions that, like, for example, Donald Trump is making, I think that I would trust Chat GPT to make better choices than the ones that he has almost across the board. I don't know every decision that he's made, but a lot of them stick out to me as ones that an LLM would outperform on.
Right. I mean, I think that's an interesting question. I think that's where we're about to start seeing the answers.
Yeah.
Um, I think it becomes problematic when there's no one to check the AI, right? Because
who can though if
it's got a dictatorship, then no one could, and that's why I think that's a bad scenario.
Really though, but like, what's the? I guess to me, it's
other
like
AI. Even so, the initial mission of OpenAI, right, is to not have an AI become so powerful that it's the one most powerful entity in the world. And so, even if you have other AIs with other biases that are fact checking this AI, that's a better scenario to me than one single AI trained on a data set by people, right? People point it at data and say, that's good data. That's not good data. We're going to train on this.
Yeah, no, right? You're right. You're
and
right.
Every model has a different set of these kinds of preferences.
You're right. This calls to mind recently, Grok went on like a little Nazi run.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of there's like tend to be a lot of alt-right, like neo-Nazi adjacent folks on X, and they like tag Elon Musk a lot and be like, why is Grok being liberal or being woke or whatever? And then Elon Musk is like, oh, well, we'll fix that. And then like a couple days later, it started calling itself Mecha Hitler.
Yeah.
And it's clearly what happened. I mean, is that they are adjusting on their end the way that this LLM is going to respond. I remember on the Theo Von Sam Altman interview, I think I saw a clip that I didn't watch the whole thing, but I think I saw this clip where Theo Von asked him about the use of M-dash, which everybody knows is something that ChatGPT tends to overuse, right? It'll give you a lot of M-dashes. It's like using it a little bit too much. And I think Theo Von asked him about it, and he was kind of saying, well, you know, we looked at the data and people really liked when it used it, so we put more in, and maybe we put too many in. And it's like, just to think about the sheer amount of influence
that a small group of people are having,
right? Yeah. To make let's make it respond more like this or more like this. And even like before you get into, I think, you know, the scenario that you painted where AI is in control and doing, like, telling us to do what it wants, which is also frightening. But although I don't personally know if I think that is, to me, like a realistic thing that would happen, but just, you know, a version of that is basically happening right now, right? If there's a small group of people that are fine tuning these LLMs to respond in a given way.
Right. So I think when we elect an AI to make all these decisions on our behalf, what we're actually doing by proxy is trusting these researchers to prompt this tool and give it the right data sets to make these decisions on our behalf. We don't know who these researchers are. We don't know what their biases are. We don't know what their personal interests are, right? So many people cite that they're just not clear on what their take is on Sam Altman. And here he is able to make an executive decision about M-dashes that rolls out and affects the hundreds of millions of users that now are continuously using ChatGPT.
Right. And I mean, it takes very little imagination, I think, to start laying out other things that any given LLM could be like fine tuned for. Right. You should start responding in this way, or you should start responding in this way, or don't check this thing when people say. And like, I think that's sort of frightening, especially for the number of people that interact with it. I mean, I use LLMs all the time. There's lots of things that they can be really helpful for as a tool. And, you know, I wonder what ways, this is going to be a hard thing for, I think, any individual to track, but in what ways has my personality or my beliefs in across the board changed since engaging with these LLMs more? How would I know that? I don't know. You could imagine, now here's, I think, where I think the more nefarious aspects come in, is that you can imagine that the fine-tuning process, you know, hypothetically, is where the LLM is trying to get everybody to lean in some direction more, but in a way that's so subtle. It's kind of like a very slow, you know, gradual kind of ramp up, in responding in ways that are statistically most likely over a long amount of time to get people to all come on board to this one thing. Yeah. And how would we know that? And you would never know. And if that were to successfully happen, I could find myself arguing with you deep and have like a deep conviction about something that was essentially incepted into my mind. I have no control. And like, I don't know if that's happening now. That could be true about some things that I think now.
Right. And I actually wrote a sci-fi where this is kind of the exact
premise
for real? Of it.
Yeah. Oh, so that's going to be a whole separate episode. Yeah. You want to like tease it a little bit? What is it?
Yeah. So the sci-fi concept that I came up with that, basically says that this nefarious AI is slowly steering people towards a conclusion, but it gets stopped by a force. And I kind of talk about what that actual force is that could stop this potential scenario that could happen, which I think is really interesting. A lot of the things that we're actually talking about, though, are the types of jobs that will be powerful and more popular in the future, right? Like with any revolutionary technology that's occurred in the past, it's been hard for us to fathom the abundance of jobs that will be created on the back end. And I feel this especially poignant with the AI revolution, right? It's been kind of hard to imagine what some of these actual job prospects would be, right? But I think that, we're in a perfect position to kind of think through some of these things. One of the things that I think is really interesting, and Microsoft actually talked about this in their work trend index, was these frontier firms. And so a lot of us might know these as smaller companies that are actually generating huge amounts of revenue today. So Midjourney, I know we both have used before. It's kind of a text to photo generator, right? They're doing 500 million a year in revenue, and it's a relatively small team, 131 employees. That's like 3.5 mil, give or take, per employee.
Yeah.
So, it's a small group of extremely AI literate power users that have come together under a specific mission. And I think a lot more companies are going to rise up like that.
Yeah. This reminds me of, so there is like the thing now is how quickly can you raise or make an enormous amount of money with a relatively small team. And that's sort of like in that tech startup space, what the goal is, right? What the bragging rights are, which has changed over time, largely, like you said, because people are these expert AI researchers. And when you hear stories of 100, $200 million contracts to poach AI researchers from OpenAI or to go wherever else, I mean, that's
more than any professional athlete has ever made.
That's insane, right? Yeah. You're like getting paid like Sohei Ohtani. Like this is an insane, and you think about why is it that valuable? Well, it's because at the very least, the people who run these companies who are trying to poach them see in no uncertain terms that this is going to clearly shape something significant for the future of humanity. And there's like, that's the only reason you would invest. You would pay like LeBron James money to this AI researcher from MIT.
Right. So, I mean, there's a few jobs that are kind of highlighted there, right? You have these AI researchers, you have these data cleaners, right? And these are kind of like the more high profile jobs in the space. But I think there's going to be an abundance of jobs and a new frontier that I think we both intersect on, which is this commercialization of space, right? This is a space that is kind of ripe for disruption. There's a lot of new companies that are in the ecosystem. We've even gone to a few of these events where they're like pioneering new technologies, like engineering nanomaterials or building space elevators. Yeah. Like, if AI is making so many of the things on today's Earth life easier and more accessible, we might start to look out as a society into these more ambitious projects that are a little further away.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a space guy, and I know this resonates with you as well, that is exciting to me. Thinking about the prospect of like potentially living in orbital habitats. One of the events that we went to was this company that was making lunar rovers. Just sort of assuming that we're going to get to the point where there's going to be like a base, there's going to be consistent activity on the moon, and they're like coming up with lunar rovers, like ways for people to get around. And this is, to me, that's like very exciting. You can sort of imagine a boom there, what that would lead to. Like you being an architect, isn't just something you do on Earth, creating buildings, but being a space architect, thinking about how you can create these spaces which are quite unnatural, but making them so that they mesh well with what we're missing as humans, and like making space habitats that have enough greenery and have like the right open spaces. I mean, that's like something that's exciting to me. And you want the right people. You want people who care deeply about like that intersection between our activity as humans and like the spaces that we're in the communities that we have.
Yeah.
You like want them in those spaces, creating those things, right?
Right. Like one of the more unpopular fields that I think is going to be more spacefaring in the future. So I visited the Mars Desert Research Center in Utah. They have like a simulated Martian habitat. It was for a show that I filmed with Al Roker. And
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we got to like drive on rovers in this terrain that very much resembled Mars. It was actually pretty dope. But we got to think about kind of, what kind of actual fields are needed when you have people in these kind of enclosed spaces for long periods of time. And one of the most valuable professions there is someone that's trained as a mental health professional, right? Because our minds aren't meant to like be so imprisoned, right? It's almost like a super stationary environment. And so you need someone who is a superior professional at making sure that everyone has their mental constitution and fortitude intact.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess almost every job that you can think about, a biologist, you have to figure out how to grow food out there. So everybody's not eating Soylent shakes, right?
Yeah. Dry food. You ever had space food?
Right. It's like, that's, dehydrated. You don't, no, nobody wants that. Man, I love food.
Yeah, I like real Earth food for the most part. Yeah, I mean, space food is like a cool novelty. Space ice cream is pretty solid.
No, it's not.
I mean, compared to Earth ice cream, no. But like as a novelty, it's kind of cool.
I guess. I guess so.
Another interesting thing about different job fields that are being innovated, right? Like you brought this up before, like space, there are no laws in space, right? Yeah. It's kind of like the open ocean, but even there's like maritime law for the open ocean, right? Or the open seas.
Yeah.
But space doesn't really have that.
And so like space law is a serious thing. It's like
space policy.
If a crime is committed on the moon, who's at like what are the laws? Like where's the constitute? What are the agreed upon? Now I know that we're in the ISS there's like a agreement between all the countries that use it. And the ISS is something that has very little traffic, right? There's a few astronauts that are there at all times, and they come and go. So you don't have like a booming economy there. You don't have like the same potential for the types of crimes that I think you would expect if there were like a habitat with lots of people, or there were like tourism going on the moon, which I see like that. I see something like that happening. That is not what excites me about space. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Ad Astra.
Yeah.
With Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to the moon because he's on this mission to go find his dad who disappeared, who's Tommy Lee Jones in the movie. That movie sucks too, by the way.
I actually liked that Astra.
I liked it.
I like Neptune.
I liked it, but
seeing Neptune.
I liked it, but I expected more. There was a monkey. There was a baboon or something. There was a space monkey that ate one of the astronauts.
Word.
Like, you didn't watch it?
Yeah, no, I'm now remembering that. I feel like I might have repressed.
Did you lie about watching it to seem cool to me? Because you know that I'm
I actually
an astronomer.
Hosted a panel with
you don't gotta lie to me, bro. I accept you. I like you for who you are.
I hosted a panel with astronauts for Ad Astra.
My little crypto bro.
Nah, man. I stand on business. I ride for this space stuff. I go hard for space. Man.
Yeah, but Brad Pitt in the movie, he has a stop at the moon first before he goes off to
Neptune,
his next stop.
Neptune is like his final destination, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he gets there and it's like this sort of cliche touristy thing where he comes down the escalator and there's like huge McDonald's and there's like spray, kind of like Times Square, but on the moon. That would be depressing if that's what the human expansion
if it's just
into
like a tourist trap. Like the moon is just a tourist trap.
Yeah.
I guess that probably would happen though.
And there was actually something that that just made me think of that I wanted to say earlier when we were talking about these tech startups, these AI startups that are like raising insane amounts of money with relatively small number of people. And it was this app that a guy sold that vibe coded it, which if you aren't familiar with that, vibe coding is like this process of not really doing that much coding yourself, but kind of walking an LLM through it. Mm-hmm. And there are LLMs that are kind of specifically designed for that, like Cursor.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, which would do a little bit better job than like ChatGPT or Claude or something like that, which are also can also help you a lot with coding.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy created this app and sold it for $80 million. He just vibe coded an app, and after 6 months sold it for 80 million.
That almost sounds like the NFT thing with the Bored Apes and them being sold for. Yeah, that resonates. You know, it
Right?
Sounds familiar.
But the thing is that he sold it to Wix.
Yeah.
It wasn't this like wasn't
I'm sure
sold.
They did their due diligence.
Yeah, right.
But I imagine that he had the experience of, and this is literally just a shot in the dark. He had the experience of a coder.
I'm sure.
And the taste of a coder and the understanding of what makes an app great.
I'm sure that it just wasn't somebody who hopped on one day.
I
and
sure
was
hope
like, hey.
not, because I'm missing out, man. What am I doing?
I mean, you might be. You might be missing out.
I need to be using some of these vibe coding tools more for sure.
Yeah.
Another future job that I think is fascinating is being a modern day Dr. Doolittle. Right. There's this new innovative series of technologies that are coming out to use large language models to translate the languages of animals. Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of cat owners and dog owners who would love that to be their reality.
Yeah. So this is interesting because I think there's at first when we started, at first humans were pretty, I think, arrogant and human centric in the way we think about intelligence and advancement and that sort of thing. And it was obvious that we were the only species that used language. And, since then, there's been a lot of animal behavioral studies and zoologists that have studied different animals. And I think you can build compelling arguments that other animals do use language or like something like it. And, I'm not a linguist, so I'm sure that there are like nuances that we just can't possibly attribute to the communication that other animals do. Yeah. But I think something that's interesting, there was this species of monkey. I forget what the monkey, what species it was, but they have like specific sounds that they make for specific animals. And the researchers kind of honed in on that. And they would play this one sound that the monkeys seem to associate with a hawk or some sort of bird coming from above. And when they play it, all of the monkeys like get down and look up, right? And then there's this different sound that they play that is indicative of like a jaguar or some sort of predator that's on the ground. And when you play that, all the monkeys would run up the tree, right? So it's like, is that language? I mean, I don't think that you'd say that that's language that but it is a
form of communication.
Exactly.
Right.
And they even found that if one of these monkeys saw another one find like a banana or a piece of fruit, and there was not really any other monkeys around, the monkey that saw it would yell the jaguar call and have that monkey like run away and go up the tree and would go and get it. So it was like deceptive. It was being deceptive.
Monkeys out here finessing each other.
Right. And like, that's really interesting. Like there's something, early on, I don't think that most people would have respected the communication between animals enough to even attribute some behavior like that, which to me sounds like a very human thing, like lying to somebody so you could steal their money. People do that all the time. I mean, every day I get messages from people saying, hey, there's somebody impersonating you, asking me for money. Like people do that. Like people are doing that to this day.
So here's an interesting one that I saw. So there was a keynote from the folks that work on the Center for Humane Technology, which is one of these companies that is trying to use these tools to translate language. And they studied dolphins specifically. And he was highlighting one of their findings with two of the same species of dolphin were being trained. And they'd be given a command by the trainer, and then they would swim to the bottom and then both perform it in sync, right? And this is something they've been doing for years. But then the trainer would also give a command, freestyle, which basically means come up with your own thing and then just do it off the top of your head, right? And it told them both at the same time to freestyle together. And these two dolphins, according to this keynote, right, they swam to the bottom, they exchanged some kind of sonic information with each other, and then they swam back up in a few seconds and performed the exact same bodily movements perfectly in synchronization with each other just from this exchange of sonic information that occurred.
So they signaled to each other once they got the signal that like the choice was theirs.
Right. And then it was like a perfectly synchronized movement. And when you think about like human choreographers and dancers, like we can't just beam that information over to each other. We got to practice that a bunch, right?
It's so interesting. I suspect that one day we will develop some efficient way of understanding, at least understanding animals a little bit more. And it'll be horrifying to realize that they have been having conscious experiences on the level of that we have, and we've just kind of been like enslaving them and torturing them,
captivating them.
That's insane. So also with the dolphins, and I think the first evidence for this, I'm not a dolphin researcher, but the first evidence for this that dolphins could use language is looking at all of the sounds that the dolphins make. So if you think about a human language, there's like a total number of words, right? And if you think about like plotting that by the frequency that the words are used, you should expect some slope. There are going to be some words that are used all the time. A and the, man, woman, friend, right? And then there are going to be some words that are used far less frequently, whatever they are. Just pick a word that you don't say that much.
Dakotah Tyler.
Okay, like names, right? And names probably happen with some frequency as well, but maybe like a superb, or I don't know, whatever. And so you imagine that most languages look similar. There should be a similar distribution there. And when they applied this sort of analysis to the sounds that the dolphins were making, they saw the same thing. Now, we don't know what the sounds mean and if they mean words or like, we don't know. But the distribution of the sounds that they were making follows this same distribution that you would expect in a language, where there's some sounds that appear far more frequently and others which appear relatively rarely. Now, that isn't evidence that they use language, but that is compelling evidence for something. It's like the door is cracked there. The door is open. And so this dolphin Gemma.
It looks like it's a deep mind, and it's a large model.
Dolphin Gemma is an LLM trying to map out language for dolphins.
That's so cool.
That is one of the coolest things that I've ever heard. And if anybody can do it, it would be an LLM, right? Which doesn't know what any of the words mean or any of the letters means. It just figures out what the most likely thing is that should appear in response.
Yeah.
And so like, it's crazy, you kind of make the joke being a future Dr. Doolittle, but maybe like, could you imagine, we may be getting way out there with this, but a vet that had this LLM technology that could talk to animals in some way. This sounds like a sci-fi idea, but I guess the way that you would be able to do that is through like some sort of AI model,
a local large language model. Yeah. But imagine if you mass produce a technology and scale it up even more, and every cat and dog has around their little leash a little translator next to their vocal cord.
Translate it.
Every meow is turned into "I want attention" or "I hate you."
Yeah. Wow. And I wouldn't be surprised to find that meows that sounded the same to us were slightly different and meant slightly different things.
Right. Yeah, and I know dogs can hear like outside of our decibel range of hearing. So
yeah, but even like a minor inflection in a bark could indicate something different that we just can't really hone in on, right? Changing the way the sounds that we use just a little bit can drastically change
the entire
meaning, the tone, like the attitude, what's implied,
and then a lot of our communications body language also. So that would also be an interesting, but albeit difficult thing to study.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you would be able to do that in a similar way. What is being communicated? I mean, you would, probably, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is already going on. All of the video, the human supplied video that is being analyzed by these models.
Oh, so the cat and dog videos have a functional purpose in society. That'd be beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you could say that.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Well, Dakotah, I think we are going to wrap this one up soon, but hopefully you all have gotten some exciting ideas for what's possible in the future from this, and understanding of technology with a little bit more depth and nuance, and a path forward as we all navigate this revolutionary technology.